Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining in this video. So a lot of times I get this question regarding what is the pending karma related to Rahu and Ketu in the horoscope. Okay. And to understand this, to get an answer to this question, we have to know what Rahu and Ketu stand for in the horoscope. Okay. So remember this when you look at Rahu and Ketu's positions in the horoscope, that Ketu is your castle. That means it's your comfort zone, while Rahu is the jungle. That means the position of your vulnerabilities. Okay. So the house of Rahu, in whichever house Rahu sits, it will represent that area in which you have the least experience in this lifetime. And whichever house your Ketu sits, that represents the area where you have excelled in the last lifetime. Okay. So what it means is that every time you look at this Rahu Ketu axis that you have in the chart, it means that by taking the support of your Ketu house, you have to move towards your Rahu house. And that can be a scary prospect because, in the jungle, anything might happen. You might encounter a wild animal, or maybe you will be bitten by a snake, or maybe, you'll be entering into maybe you'll run into a tribe which is cannibalistic and is out to eat you. Okay. So the Rahu house actually becomes quite scary, and the Ketu house, of course, represents your comfort zone. So every time you move towards the Rahu house and you find something uncomfortable, you have to come back to the Ketu house again. And that's how things work, okay, in Vedic astrology. So this is a predictive principle that not everyone will tell you about. But then how to answer this question regarding regarding Rahu and Ketu. Okay. So let's understand a few basics first before we attempt to answer this question. And I'll cover all the axes today. Okay. I'll not leave anything pending in another part of this video. So we know that Rahu and Ketu are two Chaya Grahas. That means they are two shadow planets without a physical body. And we can observe them during periods of solar and lunar eclipses. Okay. So as I said, Rahu in the horoscope shows your karmic tasks that you must complete in your current incarnation. And on the positive side, Rahu can give success, power, all the fulfillment of the fulfillment of all your material desires. But in a negative sense, it gives greed, bad habits, and most people complain that Rahu takes away what it gives during its Dasha. Okay, but that's not really true. But it is correct to some extent. Okay. Now Ketu in the horoscope will always stand opposite to Rahu. So, if Rahu gives material illusions, if Rahu seduces a person with material goods, then on the contrary, Ketu will take away the material goods if a person attaches excessive importance to them. Okay, so Ketu personifies the past, and Ketu's position in the horoscope shows what exactly a person has worked out in a past life that has brought him into this body, into this incarnation. Okay, so Ketu's position represents what a person already knows how to do well. It represents the accumulated abilities of the person. Okay, so we know the story of Rahu and Ketu, right? So during the churning of the ocean, which is known as Samudra Manthan, the Devas and the Asuras, they churned the ocean in order to extract the nectar of immortality, right? The Amrit. And Vishnu, by disguising as Mohini, decided to give nectar only to the demons, only to the Devatas, not the demons, sorry. And only one Asura, whose name was Swarabhanu, was able to see through the deception. So he he disguised himself as a Devata and stood in line to receive the nectar. And Surya and Chandra recognized the demon and told Vishnu about it. And Vishnu, he simply cut off Swarabhanu's head with his Sudarshan Chakra. But then the demon had already tasted the divine nectar of immortality. And Shiva later on gave a boon to Swarabhanu so that it could live in a divided form. And the head was named as Rahu and the tail was named as Ketu. The body was named as Ketu. So Rahu and Ketu were given the task of supervising the karma of all people. And because they were pointed out by the sun and the moon, Rahu became the primary enemy of the sun, while Ketu became the primary enemy of the moon. So they eclipsed the luminaries from time to time. Okay. But then this video is about understanding the pending karma related to Rahu and Ketu's position in the horoscope. And as I said, you have to look at the Rahu-Ketu axis. So if Rahu is in the first, Rahu is in the first house and Ketu is in the seventh house, it means that, in the past incarnation, you devoted a lot of time to relationships. And in this incarnation, you need to go to the house of personality, where Rahu sits. You need to develop your personality, harmonize yourself, work on yourself, keep working till you see a change in your reality. Okay, the first house is all about, all about discretion. So increase your discretionary powers. And of course, in the process of increasing that discretionary power, you will certainly make mistakes. So every time you make a mistake, as I said, you have to run to the house where your Ketu sits, and that is your comfort zone. Okay, so maybe go to your spouse, maybe go to your partners and ask what the problem is and how you can develop yourself. And I'm sure your partners would give a very good answer regarding this question. Okay, then Rahu in the second, Ketu in the eighth house. So this is about the lesson of not to be greedy, to learn to speak beautifully, because the second house is also responsible for speech. And you need to harmonize yourself and react calmly to both wins and losses. Okay, so Ketu in the eighth house, it shows that the person devoted a lot of time to the occult, to esotericism, to mysticism. And there was a lot of attention on the spiritual side of things. And in this life, you need to pay attention to the material side of life, your material well-being. You need to know how to build and maintain a family. You have to know how to have good food. Okay, you have to, and every time you fall in this part, you have to resort to to whatever Ketu is representing in the eighth house. You have to take the help of the occult. You have to take the help of your mysticism. For example, you may fail to earn money if if your Rahu is in the second house. Obviously, you have to be materialistic. You have to learn the materialistic side of life, and then maybe you fail to earn money for the first time, and then you take recourse to spirituality, to mysticism, to overcome that failure and come back even stronger. Okay, Rahu in the third house will bring Ketu to the ninth house. So this is the pending karma, is to learn how to be brave, establish harmonious relationships with your younger brothers and sisters, because Rahu is obviously the uncertainty factor. And Ketu's position at the ninth house indicates that such a person must have devoted a lot of time to spirituality, to father figures, to the guru, to religion. And this time, because Ketu takes away a signification of the house, so such a person can actually become an atheist. Okay, so it's all about being brave. It's all about developing your courage. It's all about developing your communication skills. It's all about developing the skills of your hands, because the third house also represents your the skills that you learn in your school, in your college. So, and if you fail somewhere along the way, you can seek comfort from your father, you can seek comfort from your gurus, you can seek comfort from, maybe you have failed at a task given by your boss. You can go to your boss and maybe learn how to do it properly, and the boss, I'm sure, will oblige, because of this Ketu sitting in the ninth house, which is actually your comfort zone in this lifetime. Okay, so Rahu in the fourth house, Ketu in the 10th. So of course, this means that in the past incarnation, the person devoted a lot of time to to work and career. And in this incarnation, you need to find time for your family, for your mother. And as I said, pay attention to your mother. Okay, and Rahu can always the fourth house is the house of satisfaction, and Rahu can give internal dissatisfaction. Okay, and Rahu is a malefic, right? So you have to know what makes you happy. You have to find out your happiness factor, and you have to ensure that you remain happy despite being despite having a very hectic work routine, very hectic career activities. Okay, so Rahu in the fifth house, Ketu in the 11th house. So the fifth house, of course, is the house of children. So you need to pay attention to your children. You need to pay attention to your creativity. You need to go more into the speculative activities. And of course, Ketu's position in the 11th house means that the person paid a lot of attention to to the elder siblings, to friends, to the network circle. Okay, so one thing about Ketu is that it will give you the things that wherever it sits, it will give you the things related to that house very easily. So if you have Rahu in the 5th house and Ketu in the 11th, it means you'll already have a strong network. You'll already have an elder sibling who supports you. You'll already have your friends who are there for you, will be there for you at the time of need. So in this lifetime, you need to explore all the matters of the 5th house, including romance. Okay. And there is every possibility that you might fail in your first attempt. So you can fall back on your friends and maybe, take their help to revisit the 5th house again, so that you learn your karmic lessons that Rahu and Ketu want you to learn. Okay. So Rahu in the 6th house, Ketu in the 12th. So this position shows that the person was devoted to, to spirituality. This person was devoted to isolation. This person was devoted to, to religion. This person was devoted towards moksha, okay, towards enlightenment. And this time, because Rahu is in the 6th house of enemies, so the person has to learn how to be competitive. The person has to learn how to overcome obstacles. The person has to get comfortable with the daily routine, okay, because 6th house is also the house of daily routine. And the person would also learn how to serve, because 6th house is the house of service, okay. And the person, of course, if you have Rahu in the 6th house, you can take it for given that there would be many enemies, some hidden, many some visible, some hidden. And Rahu, of course, will help you to defeat enemies, no matter how strong your enemies are. But remember, if you have 6th house Rahu, your enemies would be equally strong, equally terrible as you are. Okay. What if Rahu is in the 7th house and Ketu is in the 1st house? So this means that the person in the last life paid a lot of attention to, to himself, to his or her personality. And in this incarnation, the person needs to pay a lot of attention to relationships, to interactions with business partners, with team members, with the society. The 7th house is all about the society. 7th house represents your your giving ability. So you have to give back to the society instead of being selfish. All right. So you were selfish in the previous lifetime. This time you have to know how to give. You have to know how to serve. Okay. And if you have Rahu in the 7th house and you are you are finding it difficult to get into a relationship, then I suggest you do this mudra for 10 minutes every day. This is known as the Muruga mudra. Okay, the deer mudra. It is known as Muruga, means deer, and it means the mudra of service. Okay, so you can do this mudra, close your eyes and ask yourself this question: how can I be of service? How can I help? How can I love? And I'm sure you will you will receive a lot of answers during the meditation while you do this while holding the mudra. Okay, so this is Muruga mudra. Then Rahu in the 8th house, Ketu in the 2nd. So this means that the person now needs to pay attention to spirituality, mysticism, the occult, even in-laws. Okay, because in the last life, Ketu paid a lot, and the person paid a lot of attention to family, to speech. Ketu and the person must have paid a lot of attention to good food. So this time you might not get good food. Okay, if you are married, your in-laws might not give you good food to eat. So you have to fall back on your family and then try to mend your relationship with your in-laws. And 8th house Rahu is very good for occult, is very good for mysticism. So you have to seek yourself in those activities. Okay, so Rahu in the 9th house, Ketu in the 3rd. So this shows that the person needs to develop spirituality, find a spiritual teacher, serve the father, find time for your gurus and father and guru-like figures and fatherly figures, and eventually become a teacher of whatever you want to, whatever you are good at. Okay, so the karma, as I said, is to respect your father, your elders, your teachers, and to do that, you will use the resources that Ketu represents, the 3rd house resources. For example, your communication skills, your courage, your bravery, the skills of your hands, and so on. Okay, so Rahu at 10, Ketu at 4th. So it means that in the previous lifetime, the person paid a lot of attention to the mother, had paid a lot of attention to the house, to the domestic affairs, but neglected work. Okay, so Rahu at the 10th house means that the person has to know how to complete work. Because remember, I always tell this to my students, I always tell this in my videos, the 10th house is the house of completing work. Okay, so the primary lesson here is to learn how to complete anything that you start. Okay, so you're obsessed with your family in the previous lifetime, and now you need to realize yourself in work, make a career, and Ketu separates. Ketu is a very separative planet. So there could be a cold relationship with your mother, as well as internal discontent, because the fourth house is the house of contentment. Okay. So Rahu in the 11th house and Ketu is in the 5th. So in the last life, it means that you paid a lot of attention to romance, you paid a lot of attention to children, you paid a lot of attention to speculative activities. And now the karma is to develop a social circle, to build a social circle, to build a good relationship with your friends, to build a strong network circle, to have a good relationship with your elder sibling if you have one. All right. So, you know, it's all about making useful contacts and finding influential people who can help you in your life goal of of making money. Okay, because the 11th house is the house of income, so the person will always be focused on making money, and sometimes the person can be successful, sometimes the person might not be successful, but every time such a person is unsuccessful, he or she can keep coming back to the 5th house activities. For example, they can try to make money from speculative activities, they can make money from their partners. I've seen people who have Ketu in the 5th and they get a lot of money from their partners, whether it's a male or a female, it does not matter. Okay, so Rahu in the 12th house and Ketu in the 6th house. So this means that in the last life, the person's paid a lot of attention to enemies, to to daily routine, to service, and in this life, the pending karma is to find the meaning of life, to find time, to spend time in isolation, in seclusion, and retire gracefully. Okay, and Rahu in the 12th house is all about finding finding that elusive moksha, which everyone is all about, which is the goal of spirituality. Okay, so it also means going to certain spiritual circles, being of certain spiritual being part of certain spiritual circles or spiritual traditions, and having going to different places of pilgrimage. Okay, for example, going to a temple or monastery, or even settling abroad. Okay, because Rahu in the 12th house, I've seen in 8 out of 10 cases it gives abroad settlement if if Venus and Jupiter are in good dignity in the chart. Okay, so this was my analysis regarding the pending karmas of Rahu and Ketu axis in the chart. Do let me know if it agrees with you, and if you want a consultation, you are always welcome to reach out at the given number. Okay, so as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the content, and please leave behind your comments in the feedback section. And as always, I'll see you soon in yet another video. Namaste. Om Gurave Namaha.